Hello, good evening. Welcome back to the Tunnel Podcast on a night as we review some midweek action, look ahead as well to the weekend in the Sky Bet Champions. Just myself, Robert, the host, and Tom Goff is back with me as well. Tom, how are we doing?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. Thank you very much.
Listen, loads and loads to get through. As I say, Tuesday, Wednesday, full card, and then it starts again on Friday night. So we'll start with the league leaders, I think, Sunderland, because I don't know if you're going to be eating humble pie just yet, but you did say that they'd fall away. No signs of that as of yet. Another win on the road last night, 2-1 away at Luton. What you kind of making of it? Are you on the turn, or are you standing firm?
I'm standing firm for now, mate. I'm standing firm. It's like I said to you just before we went on air. I didn't watch the game against Luton live, but I caught up with the highlights, the extended highlights, and yeah, they were very fortuitous to say the least to get the 3 points. I think it was Luton definitely deserved something from the game, I felt, and there was some very controversial decisions in that match that went Sunderland's way. And as I was saying to you, you look back at the last couple of games that they've played, they have very much had lady luck on their side. But look, I'm a firm believer in that you make your own luck. I think they are playing, exceptionally well at the minute. They're exceeding expectations. We've spoke about them before. They're a very young team. They've got some real talented youngsters in that starting 11, and they just seem to be kind of just riding high on adrenaline, and at the moment they just can't seem to put a foot wrong. And I think the luck that they're getting on top of that is down to that kind of momentum that they've built at this moment in time. So but just to kind of come back to what you said, I'm still a firm believer in that. I do see them at some point slowing down a little bit. I think they've got some tougher fixtures not too far away in the future. And like I said to you, I just think their squad depth isn't as good as others around them. The teams that are kind of at the top at this moment in time. Look, they could get lucky. They could be very fortuitous in terms of injuries, and they're able to keep that starting 11 fit and fresh, for the remainder of the season. And if they can do that, then there's who knows? Because at the minute, they're doing incredibly well. But I just feel that they'll fall off at some point when the fixtures start to pile up, when they start getting a few injuries. Like I said, young players, all right, they're full of confidence at the minute. But if things start going, south slightly, have they got that experience to kind of sort things out and get back on track? I'm not too sure. So I'm not changing my mind too yet, mate. But if they get a few more wins, I might have to start, kind of admitting I could be, backpedaling a little bit, mate, for sure.
Well, you kind of mentioned the fixtures they've got coming up. They are at home to Oxford,
Oxford,
at the weekend. Then it's QPR away, Preston away, Coventry at home, Millwall away, and then the big one on Tuesday, 26th. It's West Brom at home. Do you see them dropping many points before you meet them up at the stadium? Like,
no, I might have seen someone else's fixtures then, mate, because when you read them out, that sounds like a decent little run, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
I'm looking now thinking, who the hell was I looking at when I was looking at the upcoming fixtures? Yeah, that doesn't sound too bad a run. Yeah, I don't know, mate. We'll see. Look, this could be a classic egg on my face come the end of the season, but you know what? Obviously, I'm a West Brom fan. At this moment in time, I'm still very confident that we'll finish above Sunderland. I'm willing to have a little wager with someone that we will finish.
Yes,
that we will finish above Sunderland come the end of the season. I just think you always have a team as well who starts. They start well. They start the season well. They build a bit of momentum, but I just think, are they in it for the long haul? I'm still not convinced. Let's put it that way.
Look, we spoke about Chris Riggs. I don't want to focus too much on him tonight, but you look at Hume, Kirkin, Rigg, and then Romain Mundle, who he comes in for Jack Clark, who they sold on for quite a bit of money. I think they got him in for 2.5 million. Scores a lovely goal last night.
Yeah.
First 11 looks decent. It has have a mix of, you mentioned obviously the experience. You've got like Alan Brown in there, Luke O'Neill, Chris Metham. So there is a bit of experience in there.
Yeah.
You feel it's just about keeping that first 11 fit?
I think so, yeah. Like you said, looking at their starting 11 last night, they have got a very good starting 11 for this level. And like you said, they've got a sprinkling of experience in there, haven't they, to offset all those young lads they've got in there. And like you said, the new signings that have come in have settled incredibly quickly and they're looking like right players, championship level. But yeah, you just look at the bench. I'll be honest with you, there's a few guys on there I've not heard of. Yeah, they have got the likes of Patrick Roberts. They brought in, I didn't realise that they brought in Connolly on a free, who was the forward who used to play for Brighton. He was at Hull last season. He was quite highly rated a few seasons back, but his career's took a bit of a dip in recent seasons. But they brought him on a free transfer. If they can get him back to form, you never know. But yeah, I don't know, mate. I just you can try all you want to convince me tonight, mate, that Sunderland are going to be promotion candidates, automatic promotion candidates. But I'm not going to have it. I'm not going to backtrack just yet.
Okay, we'll move swiftly on because obviously there was.
Chris, I was just going to say as well, Chris Wigg. I've got a feeling, mate, he's going to have some suitors as well in January. It's going to be interesting to see.
Of course,
it's going to be interesting to. He looks like
he's the hottest player in the Championship at the minute, isn't he?
I think you're probably right. He's just playing well above his years, and he scored a lovely goal as well against Luton, and yeah, he just shows no sign of slowing up. He only seems to be getting better as each game passes. So yeah,
there is some slight rumours that Jordan Henderson might come in on a 6-month loan in January. I think that's enough to maybe keep Chris Rigg there because he'll have grown up watching Henderson, I'm sure, playing for Sunderland. You think that's one that could come in, bolster them, and even push them towards an automatic place?
Yeah, I think that would be a great signing for him, to be honest with you. Obviously, a lot of experience. He's obviously got ties to the club. Local lads, like you said. He could come in and, maybe these youngsters who maybe agents talking in their ears and maybe get a few offers in January, start getting tempted. He's probably the kind of guy you want in there to try and keep him level-headed and say, well, look, you're playing football every week for a team who's, competing in the top 6, could very well end up playing Premiership football next season. So just stick with it. So, but yeah, if they got Henderson in, yeah, that'd be a great signing in the winter transfer window. If they're up there still come then and they bring someone with the quality of Henderson in, that would be unreal. I might then start consider changing my mind, mate. Yeah, I might have.
We'll revisit this. You're not going to get away with it. Right, okay, let's talk the Albion because it seems to be the commentators' curse. Every time I watch a game, they don't seem to turn up. So we watched last night. It wasn't a great game, but there were chances for both sides.
Yeah, I did a little chat on with a Baggies page straight after the game last night, and I was kind of saying, look, I think before the game I would have took a point for sure because of how well Blackburn have started the season, and especially at home. They've been a real force at home so far this season. So I would have taken a point, especially when you consider that we were winless in 4, I think it was, going into that game, and not playing particularly well. But then, yeah, it wasn't the best of games. It did pick up a little bit in the second half. Both teams seemed to open up kind of midway through and throw a bit of caution to the wind. But yeah, it was a bit of a stalemate. I felt like we edged it overall. I think we had the better chances, but you're right. I thought Blackburn had a couple of decent chances as well. We had a bit of a penalty shout. Yeah, it would. Yeah, if we'd got the 3 points, probably would have been a little bit unfair on Blackburn. I think a point was, fair overall. But yeah, it's just. I don't know. I think if we can follow it up with a win on Saturday against Cardiff, I think it won't look too bad. But I think it's just another game now on top of, the 4 previous. We're 5 now without a win. And we're struggling to score goals. The last few matches we're really struggling in front of goals. So I think those concerns kind of override the fact that it was a decent point on paper, if you know what I mean.
Do you think Carlos Corberan's looking at the table, thinking, looking at the points drop, thinking, we should be top of this division? You're kind of 6 points off. Results probably went your way last night when you look at Sheffield United and then the draw for Burnley as well.
Yeah, I think so, mate. I think you're right. And I think I was talking to you last night, wasn't I, saying, have a look at our fixtures for next month. We have got some... That was probably whose fixtures I was thinking of, mate. It probably wasn't Sunderland's. It was our fixtures, because you look at our fixtures, mate, they are tough. November is a really tough month for us. And it's going to... I tell you what, it's going to go a long way into kind of determining how our season shapes up, whether we can kind of keep in touch with the top 2 or whether, we drop too many points and it's a case of getting back into those playoff spots. So,
you touch on it there. You touch on it there. Cardiff to come, but then it's Luton away, Burnley at home, Hull away, Norwich at home, Sunderland away, and then finishing off the month of November up at Deepdale. So, as you say, it could be make or break, couldn't it?
Yeah. It's a big month, mate. So, you're right. I think we're going to look back. You can look back now at the drop, last minute equaliser for Oxford at the weekend. Last night, like I said, we had the better of the chances. If we'd stuck one of them away just before half time, how's the game going to play out?
Millwall game 0-0.
Yeah, Millwall game 0-0, which was just a real drab affair. No real genuine quality chances created from us. So, yeah, we'll see, mate. It's a little bit of worrying at this moment in time for Baggies fans. But then, like you said, you still look at the table, we're still right in there. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's just quickly touch on Burnley, because, again, every time I seem to catch Burnley, they don't blow me away, but they're up there. I've read a lot of stuff on social media. Parker ball, kind of tongue-in-cheek when it gets mentioned. I don't know if you saw the kind of the 20-man melee in the box where Burnley just couldn't get it in the back of the net as well.
Yeah.
It's a strange one for Burnley, isn't it? Because they're not playing scintillating football, but as you say, with West Brom, still up in there and still pushing.
Yeah, you're spot on in that it's really difficult to kind of gauge Burnley at this moment in time, isn't it? Because I think at the start of the season they had a few cracking performances and wins, but then just before the transfer window shut, they lost quite a few of their key guys, and had to, I don't want to say made some panic signings, because some of the guys that they brought in were good additions for this level, but whether they were of the same quality of the guys that went the other way, I'm not too sure. But I don't know. You could probably compare them to a similar situation as to what's happened to Leeds, but Leeds seem to have kind of gelled much quicker. They're playing some good football at this moment in time. Quite easy on the eye, and they're tough nut to crack. Whereas, Burnley just seem to be kind of grinding results out, don't they? They're just, like you said, whenever I need to watch them live, because I haven't watched them live for a little bit now. I've just been having to catch up on highlights. But whenever I watch the highlights, they just seem to be kind of grinding games out, winning by the odd goal. They haven't really got, they haven't really got kind of into fifth gear yet, full flow. So it's difficult one to really make my mind up with Burnley.
Okay, listen, as the title says, Riza on the Raz. Let's do a bit of focus on Cardiff, because as you mentioned before, you've got them at the weekend. Since that mauling mauling by the Tigers, that's how you say it, isn't it? Mauling by the Tigers. They've got 10 from 12 at the last 4 games, which is quite astounding, really. 5 against Plymouth, 2-0 win, obviously, on Tuesday against Portsmouth, which is obviously really important because Pompey and them were down there. They beat Millwall, and then that draw away at Bristol City. So are things on the turn there? Because it did look like, Riza wasn't going to get the job permanently. Now he looks like the front runner.
Yeah, Well, look, like you've just said, they've been on a great little run. Obviously, 3 wins and a draw from the last 4 games, and yeah, like you said, I think they've only conceded the 1 goal against Bristol City away in those matches. So they've tightened up at the back, but they're also putting a few in as well. Like you said, that game against Plymouth Argyle. I do think you've got to take it all with a little pinch of salt, though, because they've had a nice little run of fixtures. I think the best result for them out of all those fixtures is probably the draw away at Bristol City. That was probably the trickiest fixture for them. That was a great point, to be honest. Bristol City, it's a tough place to go. You can get a point away there. It's always a positive. But then other than that game, they've had obviously Portsmouth at home, Plymouth at home, and Millwall at home. And then I think when they sacked, the manager previous, they probably looked at that little run of fixtures as an opportunity. We want rid. We'll see if we can get a reaction, because how many times you see it in football where there'll be a manager, they'll be on a poor run, a really poor start to the season, they get rid, and just for whatever reason, there always seems to be a little kind of
a bounce, isn't there?
A bounce, yeah. That's the best way to describe it. A little kind of bounce. The players are then they see it as a clean slate, don't they? Your opportunity to impress the interim manager, because there's always a chance they could end up getting the job, or impress whoever's going to be brought in, because they're obviously going to look back at the videos, etc. So yeah, you always see that kind of that bounce more times than not. And I think they had a good run of fixtures, in order to do that. But look, you can't.
If you're the Cardiff board, right? Because obviously there's probably pressure mounting now for a decision to be made. But as you say, do you make a decision based on this, let's just say, quote unquote, easier run of games, or do you wait for the next ones, which obviously is yourselves? Then it's Norwich at home, Luton away, Blackburn at home, Sheffield Wednesday away, and then kind of finishing off the month with QPR at home and Coventry away. So maybe a Sterner test there. Do you kind of hold back, because they have had the fingers burnt before? I think a couple of seasons ago they gave Mark Hudson, one of their former centre backs, wasn't he? Off the back of kind of a similar kind of job running results, and he only lasted 2 months thereafter. So hopefully lessons have been learnt there, maybe.
It's a tough one, isn't it? You're absolutely spot on with what you say. How many times have you seen it where this situation is played out, where the interim boss comes in, they have a good run of results, you get that bounce, and then you've got the fans who are then clamouring for them to get the job because they've obviously seen upturn, in performances, and they've got some points on the board. The board are obviously pressured them because they feel, well, what do we do now? This guy, we've won 3 or 4 on the bounce, we've shot up the table, the fans want him. They're probably thinking what you said. Well, we have had a good little run of games. You always get a little bit of a bounce when the manager goes. They are in a tough situation now, because more times than not, when they've given these interim bosses the job, I think it doesn't work out as well as they would hope. I think more times than not, the board are pressured into those decisions, aren't they? Because of that little upturn in fortune. So it'll be interesting to see how they play it. I think you're right. I think if they had any sense, they'd let him come up against some tougher opposition ourselves for the weekend. That's a tough game. If they rock up to the Hawthorns at the weekend, and put in another good display, beat us, another 3 points on the board, then I think, the board have they've got to be sitting up and taking note. But I think even if he gets a result, a point at the Hawthorns is still a good result for them. Given where they've been over the last kind of couple of months, just in terms of an appointment away from, if it is going to be someone else other than Riza, do you think it's important that this new manager does have championship experience? I know Slavan Bilic, a man you'll know well, was linked a couple of months ago as well. Yeah, I think so. Look, I was quite surprised with the start Cardiff had, because I think if you look at their team, I didn't think that they'd be up there challenging, but I do think that they've got they've got some good they've got some good, solid Championship players, and they've got a couple of good youngsters as well. There's a young lad in midfield, Colwell. We were talking about Rig earlier. He's not getting the same attention as of yet, but he is a very, very good young midfielder that they've got there, Cardiff, and he will undoubtedly go on to bigger and better things. And just looking at the starting lineup against Plymouth, they've got likes of El Ghazi, Callum Robinson, who used to play for us, Turnbull, who is a player I rate. They've got some solid Championship players in there. They shouldn't really be languishing down the bottom of the table. So I was surprised with their start. I was reading a little bit today, and it seemed like there was a bit of unrest with the previous manager. He'd fallen out with a few of the more senior guys. Turnbull was one of them, apparently, that he'd fallen out with, hence why he wasn't getting any game time earlier on in the season. So, yeah, if I was a Cardiff fan, I don't know. It's easy to get wrapped up, isn't it? It's easy to get wrapped up if there's a guy who's in the hot seat, as of this moment in time, and you're playing well, you're scoring goals, you're keeping clean sheets. That's just what you want to see as a fan, isn't it? You don't want to tempt fate and bring someone in and risk kind of just killing dead that momentum that you built. But I don't know. It's a tough one, mate. It's going to be really interesting to see how they play it.
I think, as well as you said, that they seem to be building something from the back. The clean sheets are obviously something to build on, as well as nobody would have thought they would have scored 5 against Plymouth, but there we have it. So look, even though they've got 10 points from the last 4 games, they're still down there. They're still very much in amongst it, in 20th position, level on points with Luton and Plymouth as well. We'll come on to the side just above those, actually, Sheffield Wednesday, because a lot of talk during pre-season about Danny Rowe. Everyone saw him on European coverage on ITV. He was being lauded about, wasn't he? For that, the way he saved Sheffield Wednesday, and rightly so. And listen, I live in South Yorkshire. There was a real kind of furore around what he was doing there and what was going to happen next season. The city was buzzing. Half the city was buzzing, and they felt in kind of good fettle going into this campaign, but they haven't started out the blocks like I kind of thought they would, being a bit indifferent. They're winning, they're drawing, they're losing, that there's no real consistency there. Yeah,
that's it. I've been surprised as well because, like you said, what a job he did last season coming in and just completely turning things around. They looked dead and buried, Sheffield Wednesday, when he came in, and he obviously kept them up with a game to go. Fantastic job. And there was a lot of people, obviously the Sheffield Wednesday fans, but a lot of people outside the club as well. Were excited to see what he could potentially go and do this season. I think when I did my predictions at the start of the season, I fancied them to be, I didn't fancy them to be in the playoffs, but I thought they might be one of those teams who's kind of, there or thereabouts come the end of the season, maybe just missing out. But it's been, like you said, just a really kind of inconsistent start for them. Whenever they seem to get a good result, they then, like you said, they just aren't able to back that up. They seem to then go on. It's either a loss or a bit of a drab draw. They just can't seem to build any momentum. So I don't know.
There looks to be a real lack of goal threat in that side. I don't know if you felt like that. I know they scored a couple against yourselves, but they just, none of the front line excites me. When I've watched them a couple of occasions this season, Ingleson seems to be the only one who's got a bit of creativity. I don't really rate the likes of Jamal Lowe. I don't think he's got 20 goals a season and that he might need from a striker. So I do think that's the issue.
Well, it was the lad Ugbo who they brought in. He was the lad they had on loan last season, and he was, he was hot property after what he did for him last season on loan. And I remember kind of reading a few rumours and that they weren't expecting to be able to bring him back because of the transfer fee, what was wanted of him. And, they managed to do a deal, bring him back. And the Sheffield Wednesday fans were obviously over the moon. I remember the press at their, official social media feeds and that making a real big deal of it at the time. This was going to be the guy who was going to kind of carry on his form from last season and kind of fire him up the table, but he just hasn't got going for whatever reason. He just hasn't been able to kind of carry on that momentum.
He's not starting games. He's not
even starting games. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so it's all a little bit odd, in all honesty. That he was their marquee signing at the start of the season. Like I said, did very well last season. Looked like he'd adapted to the Championship, but it just hasn't got going for him so far this season. And I think, you look at their depth. I think that's probably what's holding them back at this moment in time. Is that I think, I think they've probably got a starting 11 that they can put out, that can be competitive at this level. They can. Make it difficult for teams and prove a tough nut to crack. But then I don't think they've got much depth. And then, like you said, if a couple of their star guys aren't performing, they aren't at their best for whatever reason, that's it. Then that's kind of their creativity's just done. It's not going to come from anywhere else. Look. If you ask any Sheffield Wednesday fan, well, look, if kind of end up finishing kind of mid-table-ish, maybe a little bit lower this season, will you see that as a positive? I think they probably would, considering how very close they were to relegation last season. I think the hype, sometimes it can just get a little bit. Everyone can get a little bit carried away by it, can't they? And I think the hype around Roll is maybe what people are looking at Wednesday now, thinking, why are you down there? The start you've had to the season is not the best, but people, myself included, forget that they were very, very close to be playing in League One, this season. So we'll see. I think he needs backing. I think he needs a few more players through the door. If they can get him a few more players in January, I could see them. Picking up. When they played us, they beat us 3-2. You can see that he's a good coach. You can see that he has a way. He wants to play football, and when you can just see that he's got a lot of ideas. He's a very smart young head coach, and he's got a bright future in the game. So I think they'll pick up at some point. I think they'll come good, and we'll see him climb up the table.
Just a simple yes or no on this at the moment. Oxford and Derby are above them. Do you think both sides will finish above Sheffield Wednesday this year?
I don't think they will. If I'm going to make a call now, I don't think they will. I think Wednesday will pick up at some point. I think they're good enough to put a bit of a run together, and I think once they do, like last season, they built a bit of momentum, and then that was it. Then they were, no one could beat them. They were, absolutely formidable. So. I still fancy Sheffield Wednesday to finish above those two teams, but they got to start picking up soon, though, haven't they?
Just on Des Buckingham, I think he took ill on Tuesday night in that draw with Derby, bout of dizziness, apparently okay now, so hopefully he's on the mend. Let's have a quick look then at the weekend, because it doesn't stop the Championship. We just mentioned there, Sheffield Wednesday, they kick us off on Friday night down at Fratton Park. That could be a big game actually for Sheffield Wednesday, couldn't it? Just given what we've just said.
Yeah, that's a big game for both teams, isn't it? Like, you don't want to sound too cliche, but considering the start those two teams have had, that's a big game, and it should be a good one to watch for the neutral, because I think the Portsmouth fans, I think they'll be right behind them. At Fratton Park, they're desperate for a win. They've played a few teams around them, haven't they, of late, and they've been dropping points against those around them. So they'll be absolutely desperate for the win. And then, like we've just been talking about Sheffield Wednesday, I think they're desperate to just build a bit of momentum, get a bit of a run going, get a bit higher up the table. On paper, Sheffield Wednesday should be looking to get 3 points there, but you never know, do you? Under the lights at Fratton Park, if the fans can get behind them, they could prove a real test for Sheffield Wednesday.
You look at some of those early kickoffs on Saturday: Leeds away at Bristol, Coventry hosting Luton, and then Watford Blackburn. Do you really see any upset at Ashton Gate?
You don't know with Bristol. It must be very infuriating, I can imagine, being a Bristol City fan, because they are they have been one of these teams for a while now that they're kind of just always mid-table. They'll put a bit of a run together, and people will then start talking, potential playoff push here. But then, they'll drop points against teams you don't expect them to drop points against, and they'll slip back into kind of that mid-table position once again. But they are still one of those teams that can beat anyone on their day, especially at home. So, look, the way Leeds are playing at the minute, you've got to be back in Leeds, haven't you? 100%. But you can't write Bristol off. I think if they turn up with their fans behind them, they can make it incredibly difficult for Leeds. So I think that again, that will be an interesting game. See how that one plays out.
We won't rifle through the 3 o'clocks, but you look at the likes of Sheffield United, they do need to bounce back. They're at home to Stoke, Sunderland, welcome Oxford, and obviously yourselves hosting Cardiff. Again, not to focus too much on yourselves and put too much pressure on you, but you're really needing to get 3 points on the board and start maybe motoring a little bit now.
I think so, mate. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, like I said to you, we really need a win. One, because obviously we've gone 5 without a win, so you want to avoid that kind of monkey on your back, becoming a real thing. It's another game where we haven't got a win. That's 6 now. It just starts playing on the players' minds a little bit, and it just starts becoming, a little bit more nervy for them going into every game. But also because of what we said earlier, the run we've got in November, we could really do with getting another 3 points on the board, to be honest. So, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm always confident at home. I know we haven't been particularly well last few games at the Hawthorns, but I'm always confident, playing, giving anyone a game at the Hawthorns, getting the 3 points. So, but a little bit nervy, and like you said, Cardiff with how they're playing at the minute, they're kind of a little turn in form. It's going to be a tough game, I think.
And last but not least, on Sunday, which I think is probably game of the weekend, Norwich Borough, 7th versus 8th. Borough obviously beating Sheffield United last night. I think Michael Carrick's just done 2 years in charge today. I believe it was his 2-year anniversary. What have you kind of made at that appointment? Because they have been in and around it, haven't they?
Yeah. Borough. It's so odd, mate, Borough, because I'll watch them play sometimes and I'll think they are like one of, if not the best team in the Championship on their day. Some of the, the football they play, and again, talking about promising young head coaches, Michael Carrick, he's definitely a talented chap. He's got a big future, as a coach. And like last night, they beat Sheffield United. They beat us at the Hawthorns. We were on a good run when they came to the Hawthorns. They beat us quite comfortably, really. They deserved the 3 points. And they'll get a result like that. And you think, okay, well, that's it now. Like, they've got that result. They'll kick on now. They've got the players, they've got the coach. There's no reason why they can't. And then the following week, they'll go and drop points against like Derby or Oxford or someone like that, Bristol City. And you just kind of go, what? I don't understand it. Like, how'd you go from comfortably beating one of the best in the division? And I don't know whether it's like, a complacency thing or...
Do you think the consistency then comes from that midfield is very young? You're looking at Ackley, Azaz, McGee, Ben Doak. It is quite a young midfield, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But then, what did we start? Who did we start talking about at the start of the show? We were talking about Sunderland, and I know they've got some. They have got some experience in there, but they're still a very young team. Middlesbrough, probably quite similar, really, in terms of the average age of the starting 11. So. It's such an odd one with Middlesbrough because I've seen them a few times. Like I said, been seriously impressed. I was seriously impressed when they beat us, and I thought, well, they were just outside the playoffs, I think, after that game, and I thought they'll start climbing the table now. They won't be long before they're proper in the mix, and it hasn't happened. And the same can probably be said a bit for Norwich as well. they seem to kind of turn a bit of a corner. They'll get a couple of good results, score a lot of goals. Got some really good players for this level, especially like Sargent up top and Signs. Who's that kind of these attacking midfielder, winger. I think he's top scorer now after getting a goal on Tuesday, I think it was. You think, they're going to push on now. They're going to kind of get into those playoff positions, cement that spot, maybe start trying to catch those guys in the top two. But then they seem to drop points, against teams you wouldn't expect them to. And yeah, it's odds. So you're right. That is a really interesting game. That is, because they're so similar the way their kind of season has played out so far. And I do think both teams, when you look at the players they have available to them, probably should be doing a little bit better to the start they had. So I think both of those two teams will be, looking to go and win that and try and get into those 4 playoff spots.
Just final word then. Massive signing news in the Championship this week. Jack Wilshere joins the coaching staff at Norwich City. What have you kind of made of that? Because it has been big news. It's been all over social media. Some report that head coach. Clearly, he's not head coach. Clearly, he's obviously joined as as part of the coaching team. I think he was coaching one of the Arsenal kind of youth teams, and he's seen this as the next step.
Yeah. It's got to be a good move for him, haven't you? Like I wasn't, it wasn't until the story. The story came out that he was moving across to Norwich, and he was getting a coaching role in within their first team staff, that he was coaching at Arsenal. I wasn't aware of that. So yeah, it does seem a good step for him to make, and it's good to see as well, because he's obviously had some horrible luck, hasn't he, with injuries, as his time as a player. And it'd be nice to see him make a real name for himself and success as a coach. And I don't know, you find some of these top head coaches out there, they had a bit of a tough time as a player, don't they? Maybe they were kind of quite injury prone, or an injuries cut their career short, and they've made that move
Michael
across.
Appleton.
Yeah, Michael Appleton. There's lots, isn't there? There's the chap at I was reading about the chap at Brighton. Their new manager. He was a really promising player from what it sounded like, but then he was getting a few injuries, and his head wasn't quite in it, and he went into coaching. And look at him now. But yeah, it'll be good. It'll be interesting to see how he does there, and if he can improve them. It'd be interesting to keep an eye on it, see how that goes. I always think as well, it can't help sometimes a bit of a high-profile name like that coming in. His experience is going to be it's going to be beneficial in itself, isn't it? To kind of pass that on to some of the players he's played at the very top, Champions League. He was in the same era, coming up against the likes of Xavi and Iniesta. There's that infamous game where he was just running rings around those guys. So yeah, I think some of those Norwich players will obviously be looking for him for some tips and advice and some help. So yeah, it can only be a positive for them, I feel.
Excellent. Okay, then we'll draw a line under there, and we'll come back again after the weekend and chew through whatever talking points it throws up. But you see, it's another exciting weekend. You just cannot tell where this division is going to go. There's just not much between the teams, as you said, right from the offset. It's hard to kind of split them. So we'll look forward to what comes over the weekend. Thanks for joining us. If you have done, leave us a comment, leave us a like. We'll share little clippets through our social media pages over the next couple of days. Tom, as always, it's a pleasure. And we'll see you again next time. Cheers.